Marty Bent, what is going on with you? How you doing?
Michael, I'm doing well. Just sitting here. Summer's over. Not officially, but Labor Day weekend has passed. And it feels like people are getting back to work. So getting into the saddle, locking in, preparing for a good fall. A crazy fall. Interesting fall, to say the least.
Where is your focus at right now, and what's grabbing your attention in the world?
I just like look at the headlines of the last 48 hours. You had the Japanese prime minister resign. Oh, I got to turn this thing off. You had the prime minister of France, I forget if he resigned or was kicked out. You have a citizen run revolt in Nepal right now. You have an advisor to President Putin come out and explicitly call out the stablecoin policy here in the United States. You had the secretary or somebody in the Secretary of War's office now, or Department of Defense, Department of War, come out
Why don't they call
and
it the Department of DEFCON instead of
right. We had somebody from the Department of Defense, I believe, come out and say that I think it makes sense to focus more on the United States and not meddle in China's affair explicitly, which I really liked. The thing I was on last week was I came across a chart that I thought was not being covered enough, so I wrote about it in the newsletter, recorded a podcast about it, which will be out tomorrow. A couple podcasts talked about it with Mel Madison too, which was released on Saturday of last week. But China, over the last 18 months, they've registered an insane amount of their gold.
This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike.
On warrant at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. You have Scott Bessent threatening to beat the shit out of Bill Pulte at a club in D.C. And I don't know, it's just like what am I paying attention to? All of this, it seems like we're reaching some sort of singularity on the geopolitical side of things that I think we've all sort of been seeing come together over the last few years, which is this push towards a more multipolar world, whether you want to call it a new monetary order, a new global order, whatever it may be. It seems like we're definitely accelerating towards that singularity point where I feel like, it could be wrong, maybe nothing ever happens. Maybe nothing ever happens. Maybe nothing's happening, but would not be surprised if things look drastically different this time next year in terms of just inter internation relationships, and the world economic order to a certain extent.
And then today, what the BLS comes out and they revise the number
Yeah.
down. Was it 911,000 jobs?
911,000 in the last 12 months, or 12 months, a 12-month range during 2024 and 2025. So, yeah, I tweeted out, you responded to it, but I think we've been living in a Truman Show economy, at least here in the United States. And we've all known that. And again, it's whether it's the jobs numbers, official inflation as reported by the CPI, or the price index, the index of prices as reported by the CPI. Don't call it inflation; it's just an index. Uh, Immigration numbers, data around vaccine stuff. It's all been a fugazi. It seems like, I don't know if you want to call it the Great Awakening, the Great Disclosure, whatever it may be. It seems like it's happening.
Did you see that video last week? A woman who's a recruiter, and she had posted a job position for a data scientist. I don't know if you saw that video.
I don't believe I've seen a lot of these.
It's hard to keep it
Either,
all.
yeah,
But she had said she got 600 applications. Now, mind you, take this for what it is. It was on TikTok. It was being shared around on X. And she had gotten 600 applications, all viable candidates for this for a singular data scientist position.
yeah.
And she's like, I literally have to go through, and all these people are qualified. She's like, the job market, I don't care what they say. She's like, it's awful right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely abysmal, and you can see it in the outside the data. You can just feel it. I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but whether it's that recruiter sort of highlighting you have 600 qualified applicants for one data science position, you have the videos of people sitting in the front seat of their cars after they go to the grocery store and complaining about the grocery bills. I think another theme that's really hitting the zeitgeist, which I'm happy to see, but is extremely unfortunate for people, like their insurance bills. Like people are realizing that health insurance doesn't actually cover anything, and it makes things way more expensive. You have all these sort of anecdotal data points that never surface in the actual official data that have been pointing to a silent depression, if you will, people struggling. And it's one of those things. I think the government for a long period of time, particularly under Biden, was just like, hey, we can facade over this with cooked numbers, and people won't realize it. But I think deep down here in the United States, people viscerally feel that something's wrong, particularly in the economy. The prices are up. Prices are up. It's hard to get a job. If you do get a job, it's not paying as much as you need it to cover your cost. And I think the Trump administration particularly recognizes this to an extent, and that's a lot of the posturing that we've been seeing from an economic policy perspective over the last 6 to 8 months.
They're saying that premiums will go up. Was it 26% next year in 2026?
Yeah, state to state. I'm actually good friends with Andy Schoonover, who's the CEO of Crowd Health, which is a health insurance alternative that me and my family been using for 4 years now. And he was running the numbers on this on state by state ranges. Like if you're in South Dakota, it's only going to go up 11%, but I believe the range is like anywhere from 11 to 55% for premiums on a state to state basis.
What would cause it? What would be on the higher end of it, like an urban or more of a blue state, like a New York or California, or?
Let me pull it up. Let me check
Man, he'd be a
Andy's.
guy I'd like to. Would he come on? Does he go on
Oh
shows?
yeah, he loves going on shows, and it's like his product, Crowd Health's an incredible product because they help you get over. Basically, it's a crowd funded healthcare model where I pay a monthly fee for me, my wife, and my kids. If we ever have a health event, the most we'll pay is $500, and the rest is paid by the crowd fund. And this is because they're able to negotiate prices. Whereas health insurance, if you have health insurance, you can't negotiate prices. With Crowd Health, you go and you negotiate prices, and if you pay in cash, you can typically get pretty much near like 80% discounts on the health insured sticker price. But here it is. Arkansas is the highest jump rate increase at 52.9%. Delaware second at 36.07%. Alaska's at 4.5%. South Dakota's at 5. So it's 4.5 to 52.9%. I don't think it's blue or red tilted anyway. Seems like a pretty good mix. Florida's going up 26.87%.
What's California?
California is coming in 12.7% on the lower range of these health insurance marketplace rate increases.
I wonder what the driving factor is for the increase or decrease, or not no decrease, but the increase being greater in some areas versus others. Like Arkansas, what's
I'm not sure.
interesting? Well, also too, I mean, you're seeing in real time, healthcare is it's collapsing, right? I mean, good luck trying
Yeah.
to go see a specialist.
I literally just got my hair cut at 1:30. I know I was recording with you. I had to spruce up the hair. I went to my barber.
You look good,
He
Marty.
had to make he thinks he has kidney stones right now. He had to go to the emergency room last night. He went, got there. He's telling me he got there at 10 p.m. Sat in the waiting room for 2.5 hours, then sat in a room for an hour, and then they gave him some liquids and took a couple tests. Held him for another 2 hours, and he finally tapped out at like 3 a.m. and said I had to get out of here. It's insane. I gotta wake up and go to work tomorrow.
So nothing ever got addressed.
No, he's got to go back.
I had a friend. She went to the urgent care. She was having some abdominal pain, and went to the urgent care, which to me, in my opinion, waste of time to go to those places, because you sit there for 3 hours. You're not even seeing a doctor typically. You're seeing like a PA or a nurse practitioner, and so they said they referred her over to another doctor, and nothing was wrong. Nothing ever came of it. I said, why didn't you wait like 2 days till your doctor is back in the office? Because you're going to spend all this time at an urgent care, and nothing,
Yeah.
and you're going to end up with the same result anyway.
Yeah. That's some. I mean, back to crowd health. Crowd health is just one way we're solving the problem of getting away from health insurance, which I found out when Obamacare came to market. I was literally 26 the year I believe it came, or no, I was like 21 the year it got enacted into law, and then when I turned 26, I was fined for not signing up for healthcare because I was like, I'm 26, I'm healthy, I'm going to the gym, I'm not really worried about healthcare. Like I'll pay cash if I need to, and I got fined that year on my tax bill like $1,300, I believe. I was like, this is bullshit. But to your point, we sort of got away from that model. So we use crowd health to cover bigger bills, and then we have a primary care doctor that we pay like a monthly fee to. It's 24/7 access via text and call, and if we need to set up an appointment within 24 hours, you can get it. And I think we've been doing this for 4 years now, and it's much preferable to getting pushed into a hospital system and a pediatric system where it's all in network and we're sort of at the whim of whatever that sort of corporate healthcare solution wants at any given point in time.
Well, it seems like healthcare. I mean, you and I have had some of the same people on. You know, they seem to be creating a good path for an alternative economy, right? Like, my friend Molly James, she's got her own practice. Mary Bowden, who you and I both spoken to, she's got her own practice. She's amazing, by the way. Been on
She is.
Rogan. She's been on Tucker.
She's a warrior too. She's I mean, the hell that she was dragged through, with the Texas hospital system, the particular hospital, I think it was Houston Methodist. She should not have had to been put through that, and even to the very end, they were extremely. What's the word I'm looking for? They were just not professional, and it was a witch hunt that really never should have happened, and I think it was completely ass backwards. She was in the right, and the fact that she took the time and never backed down and took them all the way through court is extremely important, and it had a Streisand effect too. Like you said, she's on Tucker. She's been on our shows, which are massive shows, some of the biggest shows out there, and I think she got
Biggest
a
and the
message out
best.
there
Biggest and the
successfully.
best, Marty.
Yes.
I was when she told me she was, when she was going on Rogan, and I saw that, I was like, man, for her, because you and I both know what that woman has been through. I mean, she had to write a check. Didn't she have to write a personal check for like 150,000 or something?
I think so. Yes.
Might even be more than that. I mean, and for her to finally get the recognition to get on these mainstream shows.
Yeah. And we need more of that. And I think, that's another thing that's happening right now. You see what's happening at Health and Human Services with RFK. You see Trump sent out that Truth Social post the other day questioning mercury in vaccines and how safe or unsafe that may be. It seems like there's definitely a shift in the zeitgeist in terms of just being able to have this conversation in public generally. And that's something like I was telling you before we hit record. I just had Jessica Rose on, who co-wrote a paper with Kevin McKernan and one other gentleman, basically highlighting that the Pfizer vaccines particularly had a bunch of DNA fragments that shouldn't have been in there, and SV40 that shouldn't have been in there. And Jessica, as you know, also scoured the VAERS database in 21 and in 22 and highlighted that there was some outlier events happening in terms of adverse reactions to the vaccines, and they try to brush it under the rug. But I am optimistic that the conversation does seem to be getting to the level I believe it deserves. I think we need accountability for what happened during COVID. I mean, Mary's just collateral damage for the command and control policies that were enacted during that time period, and people like Mary and others they need justice, and not only them, but the people that may or may not have been harmed by what happened, both at a physical level and economically. They destroyed the economy with the whole COVID madness.
Are you concerned though? I mean, one of my, I'm a skeptic on everything these days, and with what's happening at the CDC, RFK, some of these other agencies, I just go back to like what Whitney Webb has talked about for so long with the big tech mafia and Peter Thiel and Palantir, and I mean, and you know this better. You've had many conversations with her in regards to this. I just watched an interview she was on. I think it was last week, and I just think to myself, man, they're just ushering in big tech. So maybe the CDC, they're removing people, but who are they replacing them with?
I don't know if the CDC particularly, but the people they removed. I mean, that one guy who was the head of immunization policy was like an overt Satanist, like wearing leather pentagrams and just being very flippant about the fact that he worships the devil. I don't know about you, but I'm a God-fearing Catholic, and I do think we are in somewhat of a spiritual battle against good and evil right now. And I think him being at the CDC when all this policy was being enacted is just like a signal that not all was well. There were evil people in places of power. But again, I think you have to call balls and strikes. Like Palantir scares the shit out of me, and it seems very clear that their goal and their efforts all point towards collecting as much data as possible on individuals and handing it right to the government. You had, what was it? It was right at the day after the shooter in Minneapolis. You had some ex IDF person on Fox News talking about his what was it called? I forget what it was called. Gideon, maybe. But he like literally, we're going to use AI to make sure that we can find the people who are going to commit these crimes before they actually commit them. So just explicitly saying we're giving law enforcement agencies pre-crime technology, which I think is an incredibly slippery slope. And I think it was actually pretty disgusting that he was on Fox News the day after this event, like really pushing for this draconian software to be pushed into law enforcement agencies, because we know at the end of the day they'll tie everything in the facade of we need to save the children, we need to stop the terrorist, but they're really just going to use that technology to go after people who are exhibiting wrongthink and speaking outside the lines. But bringing this back to the CDC and the conversation around COVID era policies, I do think the critical mass of people in the public who are demanding, or maybe not in the public, but in big enough circles, there's an intransient minority of people who are not letting that go. And I think that the data and the evidence is becoming too big to ignore, that there's going to have to be some sort of acknowledgement that what happened between 2020 and up to today, there's still mandates, is unacceptable. And then you have states like Florida really going out there and saying, hey, do no harm. Vaccine mandates, we can't be forcing that on people, because that's what, I forget the exact term they use, but it's like coercion is the term they use. You can't coerce people to do this. So as it pertains to this particular subject, like, I'm optimistic, but to your point, there's going to be a lot of bait and switches as well that we have to be aware of.
Well, what does our friend Dave Collins say? Right, they can't kill the signal, but they could just increase the noise on all this.
Exactly. And that's what our job is, to make sure that we're antennae making sure that people get the signal, because there's going to be a ton of noise.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't understand, not that you may or may not know this, but how is Palantir playing a part in what's going on in Gaza right now? Because I know they do. I mean, they were responsible for being able to recognize all the people that were at January 6th through their facial recognition data analysis or whatnot. But because Alex Karp was just speaking somewhere and somebody screamed out like, you're contributing to the deaths of the Palestinians in Gaza. And what I can't figure out is how does Palantir play a part in that?
I mean, that's the big question on everybody's mind, because I think historically Palantir's been a black box. Well, we know how they position their product publicly, but then if you try to get below the surface level of how they're marketing their products, I don't think anybody actually knows the exact back end infrastructure they're leveraging, because all their contracts are government contracts, I believe, with classified information. So I don't think there's any hard knowledge about how Palantir's products actually work at the end of the day. I think it's just an assumption that they have these deals with the government, which give them access to data that other companies would not have. And I think that data is most likely metadata, the likes of which was being used the way in which Edward Snowden highlighted that the NSA was using that data when they weren't supposed to be. So I imagine they're just getting access to the same data as the NSA, and their pitch to the government is, hey, we have better engineers to sift through this data better and give you better outputs in terms of decisions you need to make on the battlefield. And so they're just hovering up a bunch of data, all types of data, and letting the algorithm, the product, make the decisions on what and who should be attacked.
But when you look at the ability to mine data today, I mean, you can go as far as everybody that's got a Ring camera in their house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every credit card, every transaction that you do with your bank account, every traffic light.
Well, now it's getting to the point with AI. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but even if you like, I don't use a Ring camera. I try to stay as like quote unquote off the grid as possible when it comes to leaking any information about my personal life, and those cameras are great ways to leak them. But who am I to talk? I have an iPhone, so
Me too.
listening to me right now. But now it's getting to the point, I'm not sure you've seen, like there's AI tools where you can be watching a video of somebody on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever. You take a very small screenshot of a part of the room that they're in, or a part of the yard that they're in, and the AI is strong enough and fast enough to basically scour Zillow's database and find out exactly where you are based off of pictures of the house that were taken before. I got to turn this thing off. For the listeners, I have my Apple reactions on. There we go. They're off. Let me make sure. Yeah, they're good. But that's how crazy it's getting. And the point I'm making there is that, like, it's all been unleashed. And even if you're trying your best to protect yourself, like if you're living in a house and doing video or taking pictures and sharing that on the internet, like, you don't even need Department of Defense level contractor to figure out where you are exactly. You can just use publicly available information on Zillow to pinpoint an individual.
And they're only gonna that was the other thing too. When this administration came back in, and I said to many people, I said the surveillance is just gonna get worse and worse and worse, and they're gonna just tighten their grip on all of it. And it was a nice pause. I mean, seeing the leftards, tears come down their eyes, and but they're not gonna let us go. I mean, things look at the way things are, even from 20 years ago. And I mean, I want to talk about the stable coins and whatnot, but before that, with this National Guard deployment that they're, throwing out the idea of going to Chicago, I'm like, this is a real slippery slope. I don't think people are really aware of, because I'm all for crime getting cleaned up. I mean, but if you start going down this path, where does it end? What's the end game here?
No. What is the end game? And not only that, like to your point, it's a slippery slope because even though many individuals, and myself included to a certain degree, may agree, like, yeah, it's time to get tough on crime. And if individual states and cities aren't able to do it and they're not protecting their citizens, maybe the government does have, the federal government does have the right to step in. But to your point about the slippery slope, like it's being used in this way now, but the precedent's been set. And who's to say the other side of the aisle doesn't get into office 3 years from now and use it against you in another way? And that's why it's a slippery slope. And we've seen this with executive orders. Executive orders were sacrosanct until Obama got into office, and now that's basically what we're beholden to as American citizens: is who's in office at what given point in time, what executive orders do they plan on signing. So yeah, it's a very slippery slope. And they said you wanted to bring up stable coins, but I could see the Trump administration normalizing this now, really as a way to prepare for civil unrest driven by some sort of economic instability. As I was saying at the beginning of the show, you look around the world, it looks like Europe's crumbling. You have a revolution in Nepal right now. Not that Nepal is like some massive superpower, but I think it's indicative of the growing unrest globally. You have Russia. You had that CSO meeting in China last week with the military parade, and it seems like China, Russia, India, Belarus, Brazil, many others are getting together like, hey, let's work together against the G7 Western Hemisphere. And yeah, it just seems like a lot of chess pieces are being moved on the board in preparation for something big on the economic side. And so it would make sense that if there is going to be economic tumult, that you would want to prep the people here in the homeland and normalize some sort of overt federal government intervention before the chaos breaks out. And I'm not saying there's going to be some economic cataclysm anytime in the near future, but just thinking through what would the order of operations be to normalize this, to make sure you had the infrastructure in place if that were to happen.
Well, and you also, with this, people are cheering for it, right? And after 9/11, it was the same thing. Right? We need security. We need TSA. We need to see who's getting on these planes. I mean, TSA is such a joke.
Hey, we can keep our shoes on now, though. We can keep our shoes on now.
Can't you take more than 3 ounces of liquid with you now too? Or that's going to change, I think, at some point, right?
It should, because they take all the suspicious more than 3 ounces bottles and put them all in a trash can right next to the security line and the people that are confiscating them. It doesn't make any sense from first principles. If you were really worried about liquids being used as explosives, you wouldn't toss them all out in the same bin.
Well, how many times? I mean, you've flown a lot in your life. How many times where they've like just let you bypass security just to get the flow of the traffic moving?
Oh yeah, it happens in Philly all the time. Philly, if you have a 6 a.m. flight, they literally don't make you go through the body scanner, so straight through the metal detector, and they just wave you through. And then it's like, I mean, we don't have to belabor the TSA thing, but there will be times where I'll have something in my kit and head, like a thing of toothpaste, and I'll fly through 6 different airports before somebody pulls it out and says you can't have this. I'm like, I just came. I've flown with this the last 7 times, and now you're just gonna force me to wait an extra 5 minutes to rumble through my bag that I then have to put back together just so you can throw out this toothpaste bottle. Okay, take it.
But people were cheering for it, and that's what I'm seeing now. People are cheering for this National Guard deployment.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense too, because crime is bad, and like you said, I think we should be tougher on crime. I think the sort of Soros-funded DAs are a big problem. I think this no cash bail is a big problem. I mean, we've seen story after story and headline after headline of repeat offenders going out and escalating their offenses to murder. Obviously, big topic of the week this week is that Ukrainian woman who was murdered on the train in North Carolina. And I think another thing, I think a lot of people are looking at what Bukele did in El Salvador and seeing the relative recovery they've had from getting tough on crime. I think Bukele famously says we rounded up 1.5% of the people, and now we have a safe country. I think that Jerry's still out, and time needs to move forward before we can determine if that was an overall success. I'm actually pretty optimistic about El Salvador, but I think people want some action of that level here in the United States too. And it's like if the DAs and local law enforcement isn't going to keep their citizens safe, like maybe the federal government does have to step in. But I think the overarching point is like really understand what the boundaries are and where you draw the line. It's like, okay, is it all we need to do is get the illegal immigrants, the violent offenders off the street, but as soon as you start using that kinetic force against people that are voicing their displeasure of the system and sort of black bag them and lump them in with the illegal immigrants and the violent offenders you're getting off the street, that's like a line you can't cross. No, yeah, it's really as I'm just thinking through it, it's like really hard to determine what is the exact right action. I feel like everything comes with trade-offs, and that's what people really have to understand internally, and what are the trade-offs you're willing to make to get a better outcome.
And will it provide a better outcome?
Yeah.
You know, like Chicago, for example. I mean, you have a Democrat mayor and a Democrat governor and a Democrat city council. They don't want to help. They want to do everything they can to hinder. I mean, look at Portland, for Christ's sake. Do you follow Katie Davis Court?
I don't think so, no.
I've been talking about her. I've been trying to get her on my show forever. You should look her up real quick. She's amazing. Like, she was living in Seattle. Now I think she's out in the burbs somewhere. But she's been covering ICE facility in Portland. And this girl is like Antifa's top two. Her, Andy No, and Jonathan Cho are like the three most wanted on Antifa. Like, the girl can't. Her car gets keyed. They steal her phone. Anything they can do to be a hindrance to her work. And she's in Portland right now, and it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah. And that's like, what do we do? Like, do we just let it fall? Do we let chaos reign supreme, or do we need strong leaders that step in? And that's like, again, going back to the slippery slope. Like, how do you prevent sliding down that slope and over the edge? What is the right mix of intervention? Like, when will we know that it's time for the National Guard to leave DC, to leave Chicago if they enter Chicago, to leave LA if they leave LA? I think that's something that if you're going to do these types of things, you probably have to really set a goal. And once that goal's reached, be hardlined of, okay, we did what we wanted to do. Now we're out.
But then it's going to, that's the other thing too, because it turns back over, once they do leave, it turns back over to these leftists again, and then it goes right back to shit.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers. I think people got to be very careful what they wish for. And to your point, because things on the economic front, it's what could be the, I don't even want to say a KO, because it seems like we've been going through a slow burn, a slow collapse for a long time. But you're seeing like just all the data on a variety of things, and it's like, okay, which one of these is going to punch through first? That could really, be a body shot to the economy.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And going back to like the silent depression, like, have we already taken the biggest body shots? And is that what Trump has done over the last 3 months by firing the head of the BLS, putting in his own guy, firing Lisa Cook, setting up a new Fed governor to enact policy that is aligned with Trump's goals and wishes? Like, are we in a moment where we're sort of, again, in the unearthing and the disclosure moment of, hey, we've been living in this Truman Show economy. Here's the actual data. Maybe one can make the argument we've been in a prolonged recession since COVID. It just hasn't been manifesting in the data because the data is being cooked. And I think in terms of like economic crises, it's not really going to be a fall. I think they're setting up the board for a meltup, if anything. Like, people are I think odds of a 50 bip rate cut next week are going up significantly today with the new job report. I had Mil Madison on last week, and he's calling for 10 cuts over the next 12 months. He would not be surprised. 8 to 10 cuts over the next 12 months, and um, Trump's been very explicit about his wants to get interest rates down. And I think that's twofold, to figure out how to figure out the interest expense on the debt problem and rollover debt at lower rates. And looks like it seems to be working. 10 years down around 4% flat today. And then the second part is like you need to stimulate the economy and make people feel like they're actually doing well. But the problem is, to do that, you have to print money and debase the currency. And so many people are going to think that they're doing very well, but at the end of the day, this is a melt up currency debasement game that we're living in.
Well, I didn't listen to your conversation with Mel. It seems like to me he's more optimistic than a lot of people.
I mean, he's optimistic on like the financial side of things. He thinks, and I think, yeah, I mean, he thinks the policy is going to be such that bond yields are going to come down, mortgage rates are going to come down, the job market's going to have a renaissance, and people are going to be in jobs making money. But this is going to be very good for financial assets, gold, Bitcoin. I think he said last week it's the only time he's ever been bullish: bonds, stocks, gold, and Bitcoin at the same time. And I think it's a product of we've gotten to such a point with the national debt and the fiscal dominance. That's the only way out, is this melt up scenario. And so everything's going to be going up and to the right. People are going to be feeling really rich on paper, but unless you're holding the right assets, you're going to be falling behind in purchasing power terms.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I do. Because you look at it, like, inflation's not solved at all. Like we were talking about earlier, looking at these health insurance marketplace rate increases. I mean, even the lowest rate increase in Alaska at 4.5% is more than 1% above the well over the latest CPI print. So you have a real price there that every American pays, and the lowest increase is higher than the official CPI rate. And so I don't think that's going to change. I think prices are going to continue to go up, and that's why I focus on what I do with Bitcoin. Is you got to protect yourself during the times like these with hard assets. We've seen this story play out many times throughout history, and that's just the sort of stage we find ourselves in as an empire. And we're in the full-on debasement stage.
Well, and I don't know about you. I mean, you have a family. What's it cost you to go to the grocery store, or even to go out to dinner? I mean, I was on the road. Before you answer that, I was on the road this summer, as I was telling you, and I go to these like places. I was up visiting Dave, and then I went and saw Jim. Have you had Kunstler on your show?
I haven't. I'd love to have Jim, though.
Fascinating guy, man. I spent a couple days with him, and he was taking me around, showing me that, because he's a big architecture, right, historic architecture guy, and we're in Saratoga, and he's showing me, like places where the war happened, Revolutionary War, like battles, and pointing out like houses and beauty and ugly houses, but these restaurants I would stop in, en route. I mean, what I was paying for a mediocre meal, man, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's obscene. You can't go. I mean, I have a family of 5 now. The
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Youngest obviously isn't eating restaurant food, but the 4 of us that can eat restaurant food, we go. I don't think we pay below $150, $200. I think $150 would be cheap these days. If you're paying at least $40 a head.
Even to go to the Wawa, man, they hit you up for a $20 sandwich probably.
Right? No, it's bad. Then, yeah, we just bought a car. It was not cheap. Interest rate was not low. It's bad out there. You see, like, credit card rates still elevated. people tapping credit cards at all-time highs. That's the other thing. That's going back to like my discussion with Mel, and then you look at like PE ratios on stocks, and they're at all-time highs, like dot-com bubble levels, and it makes you wonder like how can this persist? But I think the point is that it has to persist. The government needs it to persist, and I don't think would be able to survive if it didn't persist. So they're going to go all out to lower rates. So, I mean, that's what this whole summer has been about with Trump and the Fed fighting. Obviously, Trump has been lambasting Powell since before he got in office, but things escalated very quickly this summer with this trip to the Federal Reserve, that press conference where they're both wearing hard hats, and it was essentially just a humiliation ritual for Jerome Powell, firing of Lisa Cook, and the implicit turned to explicit, like we're going to move monetary policy decisions to the Treasury, and not let the Fed handle this. We're just going to get people in the Fed that go with what we need and what we want. And you have people at an arm's length of the administration beginning to parrot this idea. Chamath Palihapitiya from the All In podcast, like he's been on their show the last 2 weeks, really saying, why do we need the Fed? Is the Fed equipped to actually make these decisions? We should just hand it to the Treasury. They have better information and they'll move faster, which I agree in that context. But I think as a Bitcoiner, as a sound money advocate, it's highlighting the problem, which is the Fed is not equipped to handle monetary policy and dictate monetary policy, but neither is the Treasury, and that's where things get really weird. And I think that signals too what I've been saying. Like the Treasury needs to do this so they can basically turn things on turbo and really lean into fiscal dominance even harder.
Yeah, and does it make you wonder too with the whole Lisa Cook? Is that some? I was reading a blog talking about Lisa Cook and Drazen report. Jacob Drazen was saying, this isn't about what she did. It's an attack on the Fed.
I think it's funny. It's like being nuanced is hard, but it's important these days because she's not qualified. Like if you look at her. If you look at her in her path to the Fed, like she wrote like DEI slop research papers that like didn't make any sense. Like she never did anything profound in the private sector. I think she was a DEI hire, if you will. And it does seem like, I mean, if the signatures are real and the accusations brought against her turn out to be true, I mean, it does seem like there was some mortgage fraud going on there. She was claiming primary residence in 2 states. And so, but going back to the point you said, I do think it was to basically own the Fed and rejigger it in a way that is advantageous to the Trump administration, but they took advantage of a poor hire by the Biden administration, and she was exposed, and they just took advantage of that exposure she had.
Yeah, politicizing it.
Yeah.
So what does this administration, in your opinion, want to accomplish then with Lutnick and Besson and Sachs and this whole crypto department that they formed?
Well, I think we really have to lean on Besant and what he said publicly. I mean, most famously at the Manhattan Institute last June when he said there's going to be global economic reordering, and I want to have a seat at the table to help the president navigate these events as they unfold. Stable coins, obviously, interest expense, demand for treasuries is a big focus. How do we drive that demand as international buyers are dumping our debt in favor of hard assets like gold? And so I think the expediency with which the Genius Act was passed is no coincidence. I think they got into office and said, okay, let's pick the low-hanging fruit. We need to drive demand for treasuries, so we're going to pass the Genius Act, which dictates that if you're issuing a U.S. dollar stablecoin, you need to do that inbounds here in the United States, and you need to hold your reserves in short-term dollar equivalent liquid instruments in the form of U.S. T-bills, and with a mixture of maybe some long-dated treasuries as well. And so they're also using stable coins as I think as an economic weapon. Maybe weapons not good. They're using it as a tool. Stable coins. I think the government should be thanking Tether in the private sector for for creating this mechanism to get U.S. dollars in the hands of millions of people throughout the world. And I'm not here defending Tether, just simply calling balls and strikes. Like Tether created, uh, uh, Tether, the company created Tether, the stable coin, thinking it would be $100 million market cap coin back in 2016, I believe. And it turned out that being able to send dollars over the internet using these blockchains very quickly, have them settle instantly, and send them anywhere in the world is very valuable, and there will be a lot of demand for that. And tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of demand for using these products. And I think the government has sort of recognized, like, oh wow, these things work, and not only that, they allow us to get U.S. dollars into more hands than we could ever imagine, because you can have people in emerging economies that can never get a bank account, can never receive an international wire, but they can download an app on a phone and receive Tether that way very easily. And so that increases demand for dollars. And if those dollar instruments in the form of stable coins need to be reserved with treasuries, then we can sort of mandate into law, and boom, we solve part of the demand problem for our debt. So I think that's part of their goal, is like recognizing that they've stumbled into this incredible mechanism to get dollars out into the hands of the world, to make sure they stave off any competition from China, Russia, and any others that are trying to create competing currencies, whether that's gold backed, yuan backed, whatever it may be. And then I think they're setting up the infrastructure to use Bitcoin as collateral as well. I've said this on a couple of podcasts recently, but I don't think enough attention has been paid to the rescinding of SAB 121, which is a bulletin that the SEC sent out during the Biden administration that said if you're a bank and you want to custody Bitcoin and other crypto assets, you need to have an equivalent amount of dollars in an account sitting next to those crypto assets. And it's just untenable for banks to do that for many reasons. So you'd have to have double reserves, and the price volatility would make trying to keep an equivalent dollar reserve basically impossible. So the Trump administration, or the SEC under the Trump administration, rescinded that earlier this year and issued SAB 122, which said you can custody Bitcoin and other crypto assets and you don't need to hold reserves. And so that's another thing. I've had Michael Howe from Cross Border Capital on the podcast a couple times this year, and that's one of the main points he makes, is that liquidity in the system is really backed by collateral. And so the move from SAB 121 to 122 is a signal that they're trying to get new forms of collateral into the system too. So now that banks can custody Bitcoin, they can begin using that as collateral to issue lines of credit. And then we've seen many banks come out with headlines over the last 3 months saying they're going to do exactly that. Hey, we're building the infrastructure to make sure that we can custody Bitcoin for you. And on top of that, we're going to create sort of credit products where you use Bitcoin as collateral to give you a revolving loan or revolving line of credit. And so it seems like this administration, and I think it's all defensive posturing. Like they realize that the U.S., particularly on the fiscal side, has gone over its skis, and they're trying to leverage this new technology to their advantage to defensively position the U.S. To make sure that we can sustain dollar dominance and keep, most importantly, the credit expansion going.
How does this, what you just described, how does it relate to what you're doing and what you're talking about? Because, and correct me here if I'm way off by what I'm saying, but it seems like they're now deciding to take matters into their own hands and building their own platforms and having their own type of crypto, to where they're leaving people, and again, I could be way off, people like yourself and others on the outside when this thing gets fully implemented. Is that fair for me to say?
I don't think I don't see a future in which we're on the outside. Like I think we're just competing in different ways. Where, like I said, every move that they've made to me seems defensive. Like they realize they've gotten over their skis and they need to sort of reorient and take ground in new areas to where they believe they may have a strategic advantage. But that's all to preserve the sanctity of the dollar reserve system. Whereas what I'm focused on at 1031 TFTC, which is Bitcoin specific, is that the whether anybody wants to realize it or not, or acknowledge it or not, the dollar competes directly with Bitcoin. So what I dedicate my life to is educating people and investing in companies, educating people about Bitcoin and investing in companies building out Bitcoin specific infrastructure that makes it easier for individuals to buy, sell, send, receive, custody Bitcoin themselves, and then use that Bitcoin to make their lives better, whether that's accessing credit or simply being able to secure and send Bitcoin without having to depend on a third party. The banks, and that's the beauty of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's money for enemies. And so if the banks and the government want to get in, if the government wants to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and the banks want to compete with the companies that we're investing in by offering products oriented around Bitcoin, they certainly do that. It's an open source protocol. Anybody who wants to participate can, even people that we do not like. But our thesis at 1031, and what I wholeheartedly believe, is that those banks and financial institutions that think they're going to compete with Bitcoin native builders and people that really understand the protocol inside and out, and more importantly, the wants and needs of the people using the protocol are just going to outcompete. And fortunately for us too, like these institutions are massive, and for them to move quick enough and to make bold decisions and bold products is much harder than startup companies or younger companies, smaller companies that are more nimble. And so no, I don't think they're edging us out and sort of pushing us to the wayside. They can certainly try, and it may be perceived that they're doing that, but all the KPIs that are a lot of the companies that we're invested in are up and to the right. And I think at the end of the day, people are going to recognize, like, hey, why would I trust JP Morgan with my Bitcoin when I can go to somebody like Jack Mallers who really understands it and understands the problem that fiat has brought to this world. And if anything, these big banks and the government's getting into Bitcoin acts as top of funnel for people to find like legit Bitcoin products, like hardware wallets, exchanges that are Bitcoin only, financial services companies that are Bitcoin only, and payments infrastructure that operates on top of Bitcoin.
You think with that, so like let's say for example, J.P. Morgan, right? They're getting into the space and they're going to create their own stablecoin, their own wallet that you're going to you can only access it if you're affiliated with that bank, because it has the opportunity to get masses. You know, let's say they all do it: Wells Fargo, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan. What else am I missing? There's Citicorp. So if they're doing this and it's going to entice people that have no idea about Bitcoin, or crypto, and they're bringing the masses in, is that going to provide more opportunities for people like yourself? Because it's going to bring more awareness, and just overall, the net is going to be so large with the amount of people that are going to be forced to learn more about it.
Yeah, totally. And that's like our thesis at 1031 is contrarian in the broader crypto space, because we focus on Bitcoin only, where people, the potential LPs that we had discussions with, they like really squint at us like, oh, you're Bitcoin only? Why would you do that? You're not diversified. And it's for this exact reason, is that yes, JP Morgan and all the other big banks can really lean into building their own stable coins, their own internal blockchains, or their corporate blockchains, whatever you want. But in our eyes, that's a distraction. Like our edge at 1031 and the companies that we invest in is that they're maniacally focused on Bitcoin and will build the best services around the Bitcoin protocol. And so when I hear that JP Morgan is launching their own stablecoin, or Stripe is launching their own L1 blockchain to facilitate stablecoin payments, like, to me, I do perk up, and with a degree of schadenfreude say, all right, keep doing that, because you're just distracted. Because at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear the focus is on stablecoins specifically, But what people forget is like you can have a new mechanism to send dollars around the world via these blockchains, but they're still dollars at the end of the day. They're dependent on the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve, not the purchasing power of the individual units. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I don't think it can change. It only has to accelerate from here. And so I think a lot of the focus and time and energy and capital that's being put into stablecoin infrastructure is a large opportunity cost that I'm not going to make personally, as somebody who would prefer to hold Bitcoin over dollars, and somebody would prefer Bitcoin infrastructure to exist and not dollar stablecoin infrastructure.
Do you think what they're attempting to do is going to work?
I think to a degree, yeah. I mean, I think inarguably, I think stablecoins do work, and as I just shit on them, stablecoins are inherently unstable because the governments are printing money. Know that, but I think it's undeniable. Tether specifically has found an incredible product market fit and is serving tens of millions of people around the world because their product is superior to. You have to compare stablecoins to something like Swift. It's far superior to the Swift network in terms of user experience and usability and accessibility as well. For now, that accessibility can change as it becomes more regulated. So I think Tether's found product market fit. I think like JP, that's what I am highly skeptical of, is if you have Stripe, JP Morgan, Walmart, all these corporations spin up their own stable coins, and especially if they're like walled garden stable coins where you can only send JP Morgan stable coin between other JP Morgan customers. Like I don't think that's actually going to be successful. I think it's going to be very hard to outcompete Tether. What Paolo and crew have done there over the last almost 10 years. Like I think they have such a first mover advantage, such a moat from a user base perspective. And again, whether or not they'll get capped regulatorily in the accessibility of their stablecoin will be degraded as a consequence is yet to be seen. Certainly could happen, but I believe Tether plans on having like a U.S. entity and an international entity based out of Switzerland or El Salvador. I don't think these walled gardens are going to be able to compete with Tether, because then you're just reintroducing the double coincidence of one's problem. Like you just want to send dollars and spend them anywhere. If you have like a JP Morgan USD coin that can only be spent with JP Morgan customers, like that's not a good user experience. But even if they open them up, I still think it's going to be hard to compete with Tether.
Walmart is talking about doing their own stablecoin.
I threw them in there.
Oh.
I think you see, like, wouldn't be surprised.
What kind of clientele are they going to have?
Yeah. Stablecoins are so hot right now, but I think it's a massive distraction. And to date, like I said, they are superior user experience wise, but as the sort of regulatory entities step in and the government creates regulatory clarity, be it the Genius Act and soon to be the Clarity Act, be careful what you wish for, because you can easily see the stablecoin ecosystem turning into the CBDC command and control system that people have been warning about for many years, like overnight. Like you don't need a Federal Reserve issued digital currency. You can just have Tether or Circle or Coinbase or whoever issue it, and then the regulations are such where they have to not allow stablecoins to be sent to certain addresses or freeze accounts if the government doesn't like what they're doing. This has happened before. It's already here. It's just whether or not they'll go completely mask off and make it an overt sort of CBDC like experience.
Don't you see that though? The inevitability of where that's going, the CBDC. I mean, I think maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but by using this analogy, but we do everything on our phones. I mean, you know what I noticed the other day, kind of sidetracking for a second. It's like everywhere you go now, you got to use an app. It's the most inconvenient clusterfuck. I mean, I live next to a Whole Foods. I shop there. I got to pull out an app. I go get coffee. If I want to accumulate points, I got to pull out an app. I go to yoga. I got to pull out an app. Everywhere I go.
Yeah. I go to the gym. I got to pull on that.
Me too. Oh yeah, yeah. Gym, airport. How many times you got to scan
Yeah.
your boarding pass to get on the plane?
Yeah, and depending on what airline I have, like, I went to Abu Dhabi last December. Again, I'm complacent. I should just delete the app, but I get like Turkish airline notifications once a week. I'm like, I'm not flying Turkish anytime soon. I don't need this notification.
But you're already comfortable with the fact that you have a device to do everything on. So the CBDC is just taking it another step farther, and people are like robots out there with these phones.
Oh yeah. Well, that's just, like, but like it's gonna get to a point where like if you take out your CBDC app or your Circle app or your Tether app or just any mobile app that lets you use stable coins and you go to spend it somewhere and you can't spend your money because the stablecoin issuer has identified you as somebody who's not allowed to spend your money at that given point in time on that particular good, and your transaction gets denied, like that's going to force you to seek something more sovereign, which is what Bitcoin provides. But yeah, people will be lulled. People are lulled by convenience every day, and things are only getting more convenient as they get more draconian and Orwellian. And that's like why tools like Bitcoin are extremely important, is so that people have fallback option. I don't think it should be a fallback option. It's option number one for me. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin can also be described as a last resort fallback option for when shit hits the fan and the government makes like Justin Trudeau during the Canadian truckers rally and starts freezing stablecoin accounts.
What about I had Andy Scheckman on, and he was talking about and this is another concept I just having a hard time understanding, the whole gold-backed certificates on the back end, stable coins on the front end, gold-backed certificates on the back end. You familiar with any of that?
I know Tether has a gold stablecoin. I'm not, to be completely frank, I'm not well versed in mechanics or how it's engineered.
Because you get the Mar-a-Lago Accord with Stephen Moran when he was talking about that last year, and now he's part of the Fed, and the idea of devaluing the dollar to usher in this monetary reset that we're in now. I mean, we're in it. We're in it to win it, Marty.
We are.
But I can't figure out what, if any, role would gold will play in this.
Well, that I think when it comes to like gold in the context of the U.S., I mean, obviously there's been conversations about revaluing the gold to build up the Treasury's general account. I could see that happen. But I think it's clear outside the U.S. that gold is certainly going to play a role. Can I share a screen here?
You should be able to.
Yeah, let me pull this over. Zoom in on this. But again, like I was mentioning earlier, I think it's important for people to just visualize this. But like if you look at,
You're not sharing. Oh, there you go.
if you look at this chart of gold on warrant, stock level of gold on warrant. So this is gold like over the last 18 months that China has taken to the Shanghai Gold Exchange and registered, which means that all this gold is now available to be used as collateral to help set the spot price of gold, to make the Shanghai Gold Exchange more prominent in gold price discovery. And this signals to me, and there's been, obviously, I mentioned the military parade where all those misfit leaders, as they would be described by the West, attended. It seems clear that the BRICS countries want to diversify away from the dollar, and so to your question, like what role does gold play here? Like it seems very clear that China is. We've heard. I'm sure you've seen the charts, you've seen the articles, you've read them of the massive accumulation of gold by the PBOC since the early 2010s, and what we've seen in the last 18 months is China basically flexing and putting that gold to work by registering it on warrants, and they could be doing that for a number of reasons. One of which is just to uh, be able to easily facilitate international trade in yuan. So the example I've heard is that if China wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they can use yuan to buy the oil, and Saudi Arabia can receive the yuan. But since all this gold is registered at the Shanghai Gold Exchange now, Saudi Arabia can then take that yuan and immediately buy gold from the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So essentially creating like a quasi gold settlement layer for international trades there. So it seems clear to me that in the East, at least, that gold is beginning to enter the sort of trade layer of economics, international trade layer specifically. And I think this chart highlights that specifically. I mean, just look at how much they've registered in a very short amount of time. It seems like they're putting that to work in one way or another. I think it's to try to untether themselves from the dollar system in international trade.
Well, and to what you said earlier about moving into a multipolar world where not necessarily the dollar would be the reserve currency anymore. What are your thoughts? Are Russia? Didn't it just say a couple days ago? Basically, they're on to what the United States is attempting to do with the stable coins, and that it's not going to work.
Well, they said, what did they say exactly? They said, give me one second. Russia just accused the U.S. of using crypto to wipe out its $35 trillion of debt. Putin's advisor, Kobikov, says Washington will shove debt into stablecoins, devalue it, and reset the system. So, like, yeah, going back to what I said earlier, it seems like the government in the U.S., again, defensively recognizing that it's in a relatively weak position, is using stablecoins and stablecoin demand, just using the demand that already exists for stablecoins and is likely to expand moving into the future to drive demand for U.S. treasuries. I think the big question that remains is like, is there enough demand for stablecoins to actually put a dent into debt issuance at the level of the treasury? Because we're $37 trillion in debt. I mean, $9 trillion to be rolled over in the next 18 months, I believe. Obviously, you have a lot of demand from U.S. pensions, institutional funds. Mel had an interesting theory that a lot of bond trading activity happens in the Caymans, which are like black market funds, and he wouldn't be surprised if the CIA is running some of those funds and trying to prop up the treasury market through that mechanism. But bringing it back to stablecoins, like, how much of the demand of the rollover of debt does the stablecoin market need to absorb to avoid any consequences of foreign governments dumping our treasuries? I think I haven't run the numbers on that, and I would imagine it would need to be in the trillions of dollars. And if we look at Tether market cap right now, it is, I believe last I checked it was like 150. Tether market cap is 168.94 billion. So, and I think Circle USD is probably around 80 billion. So, how big is the stablecoin market right now? $250 billion in stablecoins, or 290 billion as of early to mid September 2025. So about a third of the way to $1 trillion.
So it's not even close.
Not yet. No, I think that's what they're hoping with the Genius Act and all the banks getting into it and Stripe getting into it, is that you begin forcing these dollar instruments on the market, and hopefully it grows at an increasing pace from here. That's what they're hoping, at least.
Is that a scenario though? Like I almost envisioned the way you're describing it as like The Great Taking by David Webb, where they're going to just take the money in the bank accounts and allocate it towards, I don't know how they'll present it in terms of like, I don't even know how you're going to sell it.
Well, to that point, though, this is additional to the money in the bank accounts because the money in the bank accounts already is backed by treasuries to a certain extent. I mean, that's the predominant reserve if you're actually reserving anything. But if we do need one-to-one backing of stable coins with a commensurate amount of treasuries, that could increase the demand. But to that point, like you're just sort of shit. Like if you're using the banking example, you just turn a bank deposit account into a stable coin account. You're not really driving more demand or significantly more demand for treasuries because those are already reserved by treasuries to a certain extent. I believe that would make sense to me. So yeah, I think they're dependent on incremental demand, and then they're going to find that I think outside the U.S. actually, which is people in emerging markets and markets around the world, not even emerging developed markets. That Europe, you can make the argument that Canada, you can make the argument like it makes more sense for them to hold dollars and euros or loonie, and so they should hold dollars instead, and stable coins are the tech built around them make it very easy to do that.
What about capital controls on anybody trying to remove their money, taking it abroad?
Could certainly, I mean, it's already happening in California, right? Get the exit tax there, or they're proposing an exit tax. I can certainly see that. It already exists. We have an exit tax here in the United States, but I think that's where things get muddy, particularly like with Bitcoin. It's impossible to do that at the protocol. Like you could literally put your Bitcoin on a piece of paper, write down 12 to 24 words, and run off to Monaco if you wanted to, and recover your wallet. And if the government doesn't know you have that Bitcoin, there's nothing they can do to stop it. You don't have to let them know that you're moving with stable coins. I guess it gets hairy, like with the software. Like, will the software be robust and advanced enough? Will it have enough metadata to understand that you're controlling a wallet outside the U.S. borders? Potentially. But everything's on the table. Capital controls are par for the course when you're in late stage fiat debasement.
Do you see dark days ahead for the United States in the short term? And what is your definition of dark, if that's what you see?
I go back and forth. I try to be an eternal optimist. I'm an optimist. Maybe I'm naive. Like I think I'm pretty optimistic. I think the problems, like to solve the problems, people need to know that they exist. And I think there's been more noticing of the problems than ever before. And I think we are getting to a push comes to shove moment where it's like, hey, we need to address these problems. I think things like Bitcoin and other open source technologies really provide individuals with tools to build their way out and protect themselves out and really sort of opt out of the system and say, I don't care what you do anymore. I'm safe here in Bitcoin, and I don't care about getting censored because I'm using protocols like Nostr, which can't be censored. I do think AI, it's a double-edged sword. It's extremely scary, can be extremely draconian if applied the wrong way, but it is also incredibly powerful. I've used it in my business, both my businesses, and it has helped me immensely. It's made us more efficient. It's added, leveraging AI tools has added to our bottom line, I think, demonstrably. And so there's going to be a productivity boom, and to ensure that productivity boom actually happens, like we need way more energy infrastructure. And that's like another chart I can pull up. That's, I think, the biggest hindrance to America flourishing right now is electricity prices. And I think that hindrance can be viewed as an opportunity, a job creating opportunity, because we need to build out generation and capacity and transmission. We need to do it quickly because electricity prices are too high for many reasons, mainly because we printed trillions of dollars in 2020, but also because of increasing demand from data centers. I like to be optimistic. I have to be optimistic. I have 3 young children. Um, I think the access to information that we have is never. I think it's another double-edged sword, like you said earlier. There's a lot of signal out there, but they can easily turn up the noise. But I don't know. I've been teaching my oldest how to read, and we've been having conversations with AI if he has curious questions, and it's been done a very good job at answering those for him. And I don't know, I'm rambling now. I guess I'm trying to justify being optimistic. I am, but I think progress is going to come with a lot of turbulence. I think it's good that we're reaching this sort of geopolitical economic singularity where everything's being laid bare. I think we're getting to the point where everybody has to throw their hands up and say this isn't sustainable, which is something I've been wishing for since 2008, since I was in college. And it seems like we're getting to the point where we're going to have to recognize that this isn't sustainable and try to go another direction, whether or not the attempt to go in another direction leads in a good direction or a bad direction, or if the consequences of unveiling to the world that everything is broken leads to violence or people simply becoming apathetic as it pertains to their view of their individual government is another question. But yeah, I could see it going both ways. I could certainly see we're seeing it in Nepal right now, French Revolution style, violent revolt. I think we're seeing tensions rise across Europe as well. I could see it there, but in America, despite all of our differences and how bad things may seem, I think we're the shiniest turd on the pile of shit globally, and I think that gives us an advantage relatively to sort of pick ourselves up from our bootstraps and get on a better path.
Yeah, it's Europe. You're seeing that right now. I mean, just crumbling, right? I mean, what is this? France's what is it? Fifth prime minister in 9 years or something?
Yeah, it looks like they're about to go hat in hand to the IMF. Looks like the British gilt's blowing out. Obviously, you have the immigration sort of tensions rising. Now I'm going to talk myself into we're going into a mandibles like situation where it gets chaotic. But as a father of 3 young children, I can't have that mentality. I believe you can manifest good outcomes, and if you get enough people to think positively and push in the right direction, you can have good outcomes. And so I think, as somebody who, as you know, I have a lot of people on my show that have a very pessimistic outlook and would be considered doomers. I think it's important to recognize the potential for those outcomes to manifest, but to not feed them with that negative energy, to really try to focus on the positives and what we can do to bring about a better future.
Well, and I think too. It's you try to be objective with everything that you do and the people that you have on, and you take it all. You hear the different perspectives. But I will say, and somebody pointed this out to me, so I don't want to take credit for it. But as you know, you've been independent a lot longer than I have. But when you start paying your taxes, being independent, man, you can't help but get radicalized, of like
Oh
just
yeah.
pissed off for what you have to pay for.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's disgusting. And and that's what, like, going back to like the not martial law, but the National Guard. Maybe it's teetering on martial law.
Well,
Stepping in.
COVID was a nonviolent, they nonviolently declared martial law on the country.
Yeah. Yeah. But looks like my middle child's getting in trouble right now. But the
We could wrap up after we just make your statement.
no,
You
it's,
gotta.
I'm just like thinking on this too, like going back to like the trade-offs, like are the strongman trade-offs being made right now to clean up crime in our big cities worth it? I think to a certain extent, yes. But going back to understand what the trade-offs are and when the goal has been reached, you need to back off from that. And I think a lot of this comes back to too is like individuals abdicating control and agency. Like, not enough people have stood up and um, basically protected their family and communities and really just depended on the state to step in and do it. And I think that's why we're seeing what's happening with the National Guard in many of these cities. So I think there certainly does need to be a resurgence in people taking personal responsibility to do things themselves, because if you don't do that at the end of the day, the big old federal government's going to step in and do it for you.
Well, there's no moral compass in this country anymore, right? There's no accountability, there's no integrity, there's no character, and everything, every direction you go, it's a grift. Everything's a grift.
Yeah. Yeah. But there are silver linings. I think a lot of people like to say fourth turning, hard times make good men. What is it?
A tough.
Bad times create good men. Good men create good times. Good times create bad or weak men. Weak men create hard times. Like we're in that. We're in the hard time, and I do think, I feel like I've interacted a lot with Generation Z this year, particularly working with them, and I think they're radicalized, and and I think you're seeing it in the polling numbers. I think they want drastic change. They're going to church more. They hold more conservative views, and I think they understand that the problem is. I think they understand the problems way more than millennials, or certainly boomers, and have been completely left out of the economy, and do have a bit of a drive under them to make sure that we fix these problems.
Well, and also, to your point with Gen Z, they're not necessarily going to college either. They're seeing that system doesn't work. They don't want to participate in it, and not burying themselves in debt by all that either. So, yeah. So they are. I agree with you on that, and yeah. So, well, I know you're probably busy, so we can wrap up.
No, it's he's just sitting right on the stairs outside, so I need him. But the yeah, I that's the other thing. I think a lot, like going back to healthcare. I think people are real, like, and that's another thing. I mean, Gen Z not going to college. If more people opt out of health insurance, they're going to save a bunch of money. Like, I think that's another, like, pressure creates diamonds, if you will. And while everything may seem doom and gloom and very negative for Gen Z, I do think they're young, nimble, and adaptive enough to basically cut bait early. They have plenty of time to cut bait, as you highlighted. Many of them are, and I think that's going to be massively beneficial for them. And the entrepreneurial mindset of a lot of the Gen Z people that I've interacted with is pretty admirable. It's a lot of people who don't want to go work a 30-year career and climb the corporate ladder. They want to go do something and create something themselves. Maybe that's just the bias of the circle of Generation Z people, Zoomers that I've interacted with. But again, got to be optimistic, got to be hopeful. I think a lot of people are seeing the light and understanding that things need to change, and are willing. The younger generation specifically seems willing to take it into their own hands.
Last question. You've traveled all over the world, and would you ever consider relocating your family outside the United States?
No, I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving.
But
No, the U.S. is beautiful. We have this massive, beautiful country. I'm not a Mayflower American, but I'm sixth generation, I believe, fifth or sixth generation. I've got a very large, close, extended family. I love where I grew up and where I live now in the Philadelphia area, and it's worth fighting for. And I think this has been said many times, but this is the last frontier. Where else is there to go? I do like Central America. I like Costa Rica a lot, but I don't think I'd ever move there. I like going there for 2 weeks to surf, but I don't think I'd be one of the individuals to move down there. I'm not one of those Bitcoiners who's going to move to El Salvador.
Have you been there too?
I've not been to El Salvador yet, believe it or not. I need to get there. But no, I think, and I think that's a big. I hate that black flag theory. Like, let's get out of here. It's very pessimistic and it's very defeatist. Like, I think we need more people who are willing to stand up and fight for their culture, their heritage, their place of birth, their home, if you will, and America by extension, but more specifically to me, like the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. That's part of the reason why I moved back. And I think we need more of that in the world. You can't ditch things. I think it is going to come with some relatively hard times and hard decisions, but I think at least I am willing to say that I'm planting my flag and I'm not leaving. I think most people think that way too. Because where are you gonna go? You're gonna go to Europe, where it's a complete shit show. It's getting completely draconian, insane amounts of debt, insane amounts of censorship. You're gonna go. You're gonna go to Central America. Maybe you can speak a foreign language. The infrastructure is not as good.
What about Argentina? Have you been there?
I have not, but I'm actually maybe going there in November for LabitConf, Buenos Aires, which I'm excited for. I've heard great things about it.
About Russia, man, they don't bother you there. I've seen this girl on X. She's like vlogging her whole experience in Moscow. I'm like, yeah, this place don't look bad. Nobody bothers you.
Yeah, it might be too cold. Actually, parts of Russia might be too cold for me, but yeah, again, it's not like I'm the ancestor now. I'm a descendant of Irish immigrants, and it's not like my culture. A lot of the Irish moved over to the northeast of the United States in the Philly area. That's where my people are.
You can't do Eagles chants if you live in Moscow. I don't think on Sundays, Marty.
No, you can't be cheering for the official bird of the United States.
Where can people find you?
Find me on X at Marty Bent. If you want to find out the companies that we're investing in 1031, go to 1031.xyz, tftc.io is where you'll find our website with my newsletter, and then tftc.tv for YouTube if you want to check out the podcast where I sit on the other side of the mic and ask the question. So thank you for bearing with me as I try to adapt to the other side of the mic. I don't speak much on my show. I try to ask questions, let people talk. You do a great job of this as well, Michael, but I can become very verbose when the questions are aimed at me.
No, you do. I mean, I love having you on because you're a switch hitter, man. You're very versatile on both sides. And who's your next guest?
Tomorrow, we release our episode with Peter Alexander, who is an American who's been living in China for 30 years, and he runs an advisory firm there, basically advising Western companies looking to do business in China. And we recorded a show last Friday, basically because I became infinitely curious. Like, we have this perspective of China, this Western perspective of China, and how it works, and I want to get somebody on here that's actually lived in China and understands it, and what is the actual Chinese perspective. And it was incredibly fascinating. Highly recommend any of your listeners go listen to it, because I think, particularly if you're an American, you may get some new information on how China operates, how they think, and to the point of the Trump administration, their current goals, particularly as it pertains to China. I think they may, based off my conversation with Peter, they may be sort of misunderstanding how the Chinese are viewing these negotiations, and what China actually wants at the end of the day. And Peter posited that they just want to be looked at as an equal, on equal footing from a respect level on the international stage. That's all Peter said. If Trump were to just go out and say, hey, we view you, China, as an equal, China would be hands up, let's do business, let's work together to figure this out. They just want respect.
Can't wait to listen to that.
Fascinating episode.
And then who's on your list? Who's on your wish list?
Wish list? Now I need to get Melody on after. I don't know if that was. I don't think we hit record before that. But
yeah, Melody. I'll tell you, Melody. The buy now, pay later, real estate analysis, the Airbnb market.
Yeah.
AI.
Melody,
She's got a very interesting take on AI too. I don't even want to tell you. I'll let you bring it up when you talk to her. But very different perspective that I have not heard in the AI world.
Good, bad.
It's deceiving. I don't even want to tell you, because it'd probably be better if you just heard it, or if you listen to the conversation I had with her. Even don't even do that. Listen, just talk to her about it and see what she says.
Okay. All right, I will. I got her. We're gonna get Whitney back on the show soon. talking to a couple other people in the Bitcoin space. They're pretty big. That I'm excited for. I don't want to jinx it by uttering their names on there and then having them not schedule an interview. But I would love to get Russell Napier on. I would love to talk to him.
I don't know who that is.
He's a like hedge fund macro analyst. Like he writes an annual paper that's always spot on.
Fan favorite of both of our podcasts, Dave Collum, right? You never go wrong with an episode with Dave.
Yeah, Dave was on here saying the CIA is behind Bitcoin last time he was on.
On my show?
Was it your show or somebody's show? I forget whose show it was. I thought it was yours.
I know we spent the first half hour talking about the attacks he was getting on after the Tucker episode.
If anybody can withstand a barrage of attacks, it's Dave Collum. I don't think he cares.
He's the godfather of podcasting.
Yeah. I mean, then you had Tucker last night at the All In event. I know we're trying to wrap up, but I think on the All Israel topic, it was actually really refreshing to see David Sachs basically come to the defense of Tucker and say, hey, we're criticizing a government in Israel, because when you criticize Israel, it's always conflated with you are an anti-Semite, like racist against those of the Jewish faith. And it's like, no, Israel is a nation state with an intelligence apparatus and is attacking a pretty much defenseless, downtrodden population in Gaza. And it's okay to criticize the government and not have to be considered an anti-Semite. Powerful coming from David Sachs, who I believe is Jewish.
Well, and to that whole thing, and I know we're wrapping up, but that whole thing to me, it's like, okay, we look, we see what we want to see, we believe what we want to believe, but we try to be objective, right? You do a good job of that. I try to do a good job of that, but I get influenced. I mean, I'm human, and then you start, you go down a rabbit hole even further, and you start looking at things differently. But that whole thing to me, and the way like Dave was attacked, it was like, my God, like. But if we talk about Ukraine, you get a totally different perspective. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what? It's still government. Even just like the MAGA people, how, I don't trust the government, but I trust, I hear Charlie Kirk, I trust my friends that are in positions of power right now. Okay, so you trust the government.
Yeah. Positions of power, that power that you would argue under the Biden administration corrupted. Does the power corrupt the people in power now? Definitely. No, the whole and the whole sort of catering to the Israel lobby here in the United States is very weird, very odd, something I do not like at all. I think Mersheimer was on Tucker's podcast explaining it is anomalous in the long line of human history that these two nations, the United States and Israel, have this type of relationship where the Israeli government, it's by extension its lobby, has this much influence over domestic and international policy. It's pretty weird.
And you got Netanyahu just doing the mainstream media, alt-right media. He's on the Nelk Boys, Patrick Bet David. It's like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Why? What's going on here? Very bizarre.
It is.
That's where I think the censorship is coming back, man. I think at some point, I don't believe YouTube is just done. Killing your channel, killing my channel. And I could see them using this, and they've already talked about this, so it's not like I'm coming up with an idea of my own, but I could see that being the guys to like start shutting us down again.
Yeah. Start covering the Qatar attack from this morning. We get shadow ban first.
Or we'll probably we can't even talk about, we get meme coins were killed us on X the last time.
Yeah. No, I mean that's the other, like the anti-Semite laws that have been passed in some laws. It's some states. It's like very, I mean, there was pushback publicly, but the illegal to boycott, I think that was at the federal level. Legal to boycott Israel was made illegal or something like that. All very odd. I think we need to batten down the hatches, focus on those who are suffering under the pressures of the silent depression that I believe this country's been under for a while, and just get back. Like, I'm a big non-interventionist, anti-war, mind your own business guy. I think we need to get back to that. If I were to state my political views, that's as simply as I would put them. Free trade, non-interventionist, foreign policy, focus on the homeland.
And leave me the fuck alone.
Yes, please. Please leave me the fuck alone.
Marty, I always
All
enjoy
right.
our conversations. I look forward to the next one, and I look forward to watching the episode tomorrow when you publish it.
All right, Michael. Until next time.
Mic drop.
Thank you, brother.
Mic drop.